This is NET, National Educational Television.
This is PBS, the Public Broadcasting Service.
This is PBS. PBS.
Hello and welcome to This is Public Broadcasting. I'm your host, Captain Rutlidge. Nearly 20 years ago, PBS and Deke Animation collaborated on an educational series set during the days of the American Revolution. From the first minutes of the first episode, children saw the great events of our nation's early days through the eyes of children, from the Boston Tea Party to the inauguration of President George Washington. What's more, children identified with the main characters, the sensible Sarah Phillips, the hot-headed James Hiller, and the troublesome but lovable Henri Lefebvre. So, that begs the question, what would the series be like if it were set during the American Civil War? I've pondered this question for quite some time, and if you'll excuse me, I've crafted a small story treatment for such a series. Our story begins in March of 1861. We meet 15-year-old Cordelia Parmenter in the port of Charleston, South Carolina. Her parents own a plantation outside the city, but both of them are traveling in Europe on business. Cordelia is set to go north to attend school in Richmond, Virginia, but the secession of South Carolina has made it difficult to travel northwards by train or stagecoach, and the garrison of Fort Sumter has all but bottled up shipping in Charleston Harbor. Her only choice is to send a telegraph northwards to her cousin, Sam Hiller. Get the connection? Sam is 16 years old. His father was born in Pennsylvania and his mother was a Virginian. As a teenager, he studied sketching and worked in New York as an assistant to early photographer Matthew Brady. While working in New York, he met Frederick Douglass and Douglass's niece, Betsy Murray. Betsy was born a slave in Maryland, but escaped north to New York on the Underground Railroad. Douglass took her in, taught her to read and write, and introduced her to the abolitionist movement. She and Sam became good friends while in New York. Sam even made daguerreotypes of her and Douglass. Betsy soon got a knack for reporting on abolitionist meetings, catching the attention of her Uncle Frederick. He arranged for both Betsy and Sam to take up work at a paper in Washington, run by one of Douglass's former employees, Heinrich Drucker. Heinrich previously worked as a printer in the Palatine city of Mainz, but after the 1848 revolutions, he fled with a few personal belongings and sailed to America. He worked with Douglass on the North Star, then afterwards set up his own paper in Washington, where Sam and Betsy would work. Betsy reported, while Sam created lithographs for printing the paper. In April 1861, Cordelia's telegraph reaches Sam in Washington. Luckily, Sam, Betsy, and Heinrich are set to accompany Captain Gustavus Fox on a mission to resupply the garrison at Fort Sumter. By April 12th, they are in sight of the harbor when shots are seen. Brigadier General P.G.T. Beauregard had opened fire on Fort Sumter. Fearing for Cordelia's safety, Sam and Heinrich commandeer a boat and row to the quay under the scream of shells and mortars. Cordelia is already by the quayside, observing the attack among many others. Heinrich and Sam find her and row her away from the onslaught back to Fox's ship. On board, she meets Sam's friend Betsy. The main conflict for the series, well apart from the war between the states, is between Cordelia and Betsy. Cordelia grew up on a small southern plantation. She may not be comfortable with slavery, but still viewed it as a necessary evil. Betsy, meanwhile, experienced slavery firsthand and knows it to be a complete atrocity. It's up to Sam and Heinrich to keep peace between the two. After the loss of Fort Sumter to General Beauregard, the defending Union forces under Major Robert Anderson board Captain Fox's ship and return north. En route, Betsy interviews the soldiers and shares her findings with Sam and Heinrich. Cordelia weighs in with what she overheard from Confederate soldiers in Charleston. Heinrich is impressed with both, along with a sketch by Sam depicting the bombardment. Captain Fox leaves them off at Baltimore, and the four return to Washington and print their story. That's episode 1 out of the way, and quite a lot of it, too. Upon their arrival in Washington, Frederick Douglass visits our four Maines, along with Matthew Brady. Douglass meets Cordelia for the first time. In spite of her views on slavery, he remains civil and friendly towards her. Betsy confronts him about it, but he simply replies with one of his quotes, "I would unite with anybody to do right, and with nobody to do wrong." Sam, meanwhile, is set to help Brady photograph Colonel Robert E. Lee, who is set to take command of Union forces against the rebelling Confederate states. To the surprise of all, though, Colonel Lee sides with the newly seceded Virginia and declines the offer. Instead, he takes command of the Virginia forces. As summer approaches, Sam and Betsy witness the formation of a new Union Army, while Cordelia assists Dorothea Dix with the new United States Sanitary Commission. On July 21, 1861, Sam, Betsy, and Cordelia are north of Manassas to witness the first battle of the new war, the First Battle of Bull Run. Cordelia interviews Virginia Military Institute graduates under the command of Brigadier General Thomas Jackson, soon to be known as Stonewall Jackson. Sam takes photographs of General Irvin McDowell's troops. When the battle starts, though, it's made clear to everybody this won't be a quick war to finish. When the Federal wounded are brought in, Betsy meets a wounded major, his leg amputated. The major trusts Betsy with a letter, and dies a week after the battle. Her curiosity getting the better of her, Betsy opens the major's letter, and reads it to both Sam and Cordelia. The wounded major was none other than Major Sullivan Ballou. There were many important battles during the American Civil War. Just like how James, Sarah, and Henri witnessed the major battles of the American Revolution, Sam, Betsy, and Cordelia witnessed many major battles of the American Civil War, and meet the men and women instrumental in these victories, great and small. In February of 1862, our friends meet Brigadier General U.S. Grant as he successfully captures Fort Donelson. In March, our friends witness the duel of the Monitor and Merrimack ironclads in Chesapeake Bay. At Shiloh, Sam and Betsy talk with the men tasked with burying the Union and Confederate dead, while Cordelia interviews a wounded General Nathan Bedford Forrest. Forrest's extreme views of Anglo-Saxon supremacy leave her feeling very uncomfortable and doubtful about the cause of the South. Sam and Cordelia are at hand when Admiral Farragut dams the torpedoes, and Cordelia works with Nurse Clara Barton during the Second Battle of Bull Run. We meet Federal commanders like McClellan, Hooker, Burnside, and Buell, Confederates like Stuart, Ewell, Johnston, and Pemberton, and diarists like Elisha Hunt Rhodes and Sam Watkins. Even a few great women like Union spy Sarah Edmonds, crossdresser Albert Cashier, Union nurses Clara Barton and Elizabeth Blackwell, and then the women of the White House, Mary Todd Lincoln, and her friend and confidant, Elizabeth Keckley. Both the Federal and Confederate armies were made up of men from all over. We meet units made up of Irishmen like the 69th New York and the 1st Virginia, German units like the 32nd Indiana and 1st Texas, Italians of the Garibaldi Guard, Native Americans like Colonel Eli Parker and Jackson McCurtain, along with a few Hispanic soldiers like Augusto Rodriguez and Santos Benavides. And that's not to mention all the small percentage of Asians and Pacific Islanders who served, like Private Thomas Sylvanus. In an episode covering the Emancipation Proclamation, both Betsy and Frederick Douglass tell about their time in slavery. Douglass tells of his daring escape with help from his wife, as well as Betsy's experience as a girl on the Underground Railroad, alongside Agent Moses herself, Harriet Tubman. In July of 1863, our friends meet the 54th Massachusetts Volunteers, one of the first African-American regiments of the Union Army, along with a number of other colored regiments to follow. After the bloody Union victories at Gettysburg and Vicksburg, Cordelia and Betsy come face to face with Abraham Lincoln, on his way to deliver an address at the Gettysburg battlefield. Sam is eager to photograph the president during his address, but the famed 271-word speech leaves Sam without his prized photo. The nation, however, sees a light at the end of the tunnel of this hellish war. As the war continues through 1864, our Maines witness fighting in both the East and the West. At Petersburg, fighting thickens. In Georgia, Sam follows General William Tecumseh Sherman during the March to the Sea, witnessing the destruction of homes, farms, and businesses, all to cripple the South into submission. Compared to that episode of Liberty's Kids where General Sullivan destroys the Iroquois villages. Out west, Heinrich, Betsy, and Cordelia meet future heroes of the Wild West like Buffalo Bill and Wild Bill Hickok at the Battle of Westport, and spend Christmas in Nashville with the battle-beaten soldiers of the 5th Minnesota Volunteers. In 1865, our friends are back in Washington. Abraham Lincoln has started his second term as United States President, and Congress debates on the passage of the 13th Amendment. Betsy and Douglas celebrate the freeing of the slaves. Cordelia celebrates with them. That April, General Lee's forces surrender to General Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, starting the end of the bloody 5-year conflict. A week later, on Good Friday, they hear the dreadful news of President Lincoln's death. Sam and Cordelia mourn his loss alongside Department of the Interior clerk Walt Whitman. Heinrich and Betsy follow Lieutenant Edward Dougherty on the trail of Lincoln's assassin John Wilkes Booth. Eventually, all of Booth's conspirators are rounded up and executed. All 4 accompany Lincoln's funeral train to Illinois. This could be a good place to leave off the series. However, I think we could go further here. In June of 1865, Sam, Betsy, and Cordelia travel with General Gordon Granger's soldiers to Galveston, Texas. On June 19th, General Granger announced General Order No. 3, announcing the emancipation of slaves throughout the state of Texas. The freedmen of Galveston openly celebrate. Things are still far from over, though. The South is still devastated from the war. Freed slaves are treated as if emancipation never happened. Through her newly found friendship with Betsy, Cordelia volunteers for the Freedmen's Bureau as a teacher. With funds from her parents, she starts a school for freed slaves in Maryland and teaches alongside Betsy. Heinrich soon grows tired of life in Washington. With many people moving westwards under the Homestead Act, Heinrich packs up his printing press and travels to Nebraska Territory and starts up a German-language newspaper for the newly arrived immigrants from Europe. Sam remains in Washington, in the shop once occupied by Heinrich's newspaper. He makes a living taking photographs and doing sketches, but still remembers the 5 years he spent during the war between the states, with fondness for time with his old friends and disgust at the unwavering death and bloodshed. And that, viewers, is my idea of a Liberty Kids sequel set in the American Civil War. As for a title, I'd refer to the series as Liberty's Kids, United We Stand. Sure, the story would need a little more development, but I think in the right hands it could become a worthy successor to the original Liberty Kids television program. Of course, we'd have to unscramble the complete copyright debacle, but stranger things have happened. So what do you guys think? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. And please be civil. And without further ado, it's time to move on to the PBS member station spotlight. And it's time once again to draw a station name out of the pretty straw hat, minus the ones that fell on the floor. Okay, let's take a look here. And we're going to go down to the American Southwest with Arizona PBS KAET 8. In 1959, Arizona State University purchased a TV transmitter previously owned by Phoenix commercial station KVAR. In 1960, the FCC granted a license for the new station KAET. In 1961, KAET began broadcasting, showing programming from National Educational Television and local telecourses. In 1967, the station moved to color broadcasting, and in 1970 joined the new Public Broadcasting Service. In 1980, KAET began expanding its broadcasting reach and in 1999 it began digital broadcasting on UHF Channel 29. Today, Arizona PBS is operated by the Arizona State Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications, and has translators across the state of Arizona. Programming produced by Arizona PBS includes local programs such as Arizona Horizon, Plate and Pour, Innovating the Future, the Hispanic Affairs program Horizonte, and the Arizona State University Cronkite News, along with serving as the Western office of the PBS NewsHour. If you're in Arizona, you can tune in to Arizona PBS on Channel 8, with Arizona PBS Life on the .2 channel, World on the .3 channel, PBS Kids on the .4 channel, and a simulcast of sister station KBAQ-FM on the .5 channel. Thank you to everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, feel free to like, subscribe, and share, comment below, ring the bell, follow on Twitter, and also don't forget to support your local PBS stations. So more programming related to Liberty's kids can find its way to your television screens. And thank you everyone for tuning in to Series 4. I hope to see you again soon for Series 5. And until next time, I'm Captain Rutlidge. Good day.